Hey everyone, I'm Rob with Rob's Dogs, and this is Mac. Today we're going to be working on leash pressure. I'll first explain to you guys why it's so important, and then how we're going to teach your dog this training tool. So, leash pressure is basically when we pull down, your dog should know to lay down. When we pull up, your dog should know to sit. And when we pull towards us, your dog should know to come. Naturally, though, a lot of dogs will resist the leash pressure. If you pull towards you, they'll usually back up or pull that way. If you pull down, they'll just be kind of confused. So we need to teach them this. Some dogs know it naturally and it's easy for them, and some dogs don't. So basically, the reason why it's important is that's how we're going to enforce the commands. Once your dog understands what leash pressure is and how to respond to it, then we can start enforcing the sit, the down, and the come. In the future, if your dog knows sit and they know leash pressure, you'll say sit, you'll give them a chance to do it, and if they don't do it, you'll pull up. And you'll have a collar like this on, and they'll know that they have to sit to make it stop. And then you'll say down. And if they don't do it and they understand what down means and they understand leash pressure, you'll pull down and they'll understand they have to lay down to make it stop. And it's the same thing for come. So now we're going to get started right now with Mac here. He doesn't quite understand it yet. I'll show you guys how to start this process and what issues people typically run into and kind of how to work around those issues. So a big thing of what we're going to use is food. You want to make sure your dog is hungry if they're not just super motivated for food already. Mac, though, loves food, so he doesn't have to be too hungry, but some dogs are a little bit picky and only are motivated if they've gone some time without eating. So what we want to do is we want to pull down very lightly. We don't want to pull down super hard. We just want to pull down hard enough for them to notice. If after about 5 seconds your dog is confused, help them out a little bit. I'm going to start off with the downward leash pressure. I'm going to pull down very lightly. Oh. Not quite laying down yet. The second his butt hits the ground, I'll say yes and give him the food and let him up. I'm going to pull down lightly. If after about 5 seconds he's confused, yes! Give him the food. Okay? And then let him up. Now let's say your dog didn't lay down that fast. Let's say they just kind of had their head there and they were looking a bit confused. That's fine. 5 seconds goes by, they're confused, add the food to their nose and just bring it straight down to their feet. Do not bring it out like this, because that's going to make them want to walk this way. Bring it straight down so they have to lay straight down. If your dog is short like this and they're actually able to reach your hand and your hand's all the way to the ground, that's fine. Just hold your hand down low as you're pulling the leash down the whole time. And the second their elbows hit the ground, say yes, give them the treat, and then pull them out of the command. He knows this one already. Yes! Good boy. Just like that. Now, let's say your dog just, after a few seconds, loses interest in the food that you have. Well, what you could do is use some food that's a bit higher value. You could use some hot dogs, some chopped up string cheese, something like that. Let's say they're still not motivated, or let's say they just have bad food allergies and you don't want to feed them that sort of thing. Then what you're going to have to do is let a couple hours go by of them not eating and try it again. If the same thing happens, let a few more hours go by until they're motivated enough to at least stay focused for up to 5 minutes long. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure you have the food in your hand, but your hand is closed. They shouldn't be able to get the food until you open your hand up. And you're not going to open your hand up until they lay down. Okay, so he was easy for that one. How about sit, though? 5 seconds, he's confused. Good, or yes! And the leash pressure stops. The second they do the behavior you want, they sit or they lay down, The leash pressure stops, you say yes, you give him the food. And then you pull him out of the command. You just kind of lure them out of the command, so that way, if he was sitting, I would say, it'd be just like this. Yes! Food, pull him out of the command. Yes is going to mean that they're free from the command in the future. So right now, we want to start off showing them that once we say yes, they should get out of that position. Yes! See? Second he sat, leash pressure stopped. He got the food. I said yes. I pulled him out of the command. Now, it might help to have somebody watch you do this, because it's pretty easy to critique someone else, but when you're in the midst of doing all these different things, saying yes, stop pulling on the leash, pull him out of the command, it might be beneficial to have somebody watch you and let you know what you're doing wrong. Somebody that's also watched the video, obviously. I'll try the down again. Yes! See? Now, let's say your dog knows the word sit or knows the word down. Don't say the word right away. We're not really worried about them learning the word right now. We're worried about them learning the leash pressure technique or part of it. But let's say you're pulling down and they're confused. They don't know what to do. You start adding in the hand signal after 5 seconds, but let's say they're still confused. Then what you could do is say down. And if your dog knows it, it might help them out. But this might take up 5, 10, 15, an hour, 2 hours of practice before your dog actually starts to lay down as soon as you pull down like this. So just be patient and practice, as long as your dog is interested in the food, get 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And as soon as they're just kind of bored of it, put them away, do something else, and then don't feed them for a few hours and try it again later. Pulling up lightly. Now, if your dog starts to bite the leash, just seem very distracted by this, use the food to get their attention away from that. If they're more interested in the leash than the food, maybe you're pulling a little bit too hard with your leash. Just pull hard enough for them to notice. There we go. Sit. Yes. Good boy. Pretty simple. But it can take some time. So he knows. Yes! He knows the down. The down's super easy for him. The sit. Now I said it. Now maybe that is what kind of had him figure it out. And the reason why we don't want to say sit or down right away is because we're working on the leash pressure. We want to make sure your dog understands the leash pressure. If you don't say anything and you just pull down and your dog lays down immediately every single time, you know your dog understands it perfectly. But if they're kind of like him, where sometimes you pull down and he lays down right away, but sometimes you pull down and he acts confused like that, then maybe they don't know it completely and you have to work on it a bit more. Yes! Boy, yeah, that's doing pretty good. Yes! Cool. Little freebie there. Now we'll work on the come. We're not going to say come unless we have to help him out if he's confused when we're pulling. Okay, now for the come leash pressure technique, you want your dog to be a little bit distracted so that way they actually have a reason to leave your side. If they know you have food, they may never leave your side and you won't be able to even work on this. So kind of like this. I give him a little pull when he's away from me. Hey, yes, good boy! As soon as he's focused on me and he's coming towards me, I say yes and give him the food. Now, in that situation, he started walking towards me, but it wasn't because I was pulling, it was because he was smelling the carpet there. So I didn't say yes in that moment. As soon as he was focused on me and he started walking towards me because he wanted to come towards me, I then said yes. I marked the moment in time he decided to walk towards me. He knows I have food now, so I might not be able to get him to leave my side. I might have to just walk around over this rug where there's lots of smells. I may have to bring him in the backyard. There's some distractions out there. Or I may have to work on the sit or the downward leash pressure technique before working on this. No. So yeah, I'll work on the other ones instead. Yes! Good boy. Down. I'm sorry. My bad. I'm not working on the word. I'm working on the leash pressure. Now, let's say you really have a problem with your dog leaving your side because they're just so focused on you. Well, that's a good problem to have. But if that's the case, you might have to start working on their sit and their stay, or their down or their stay, before you could really work on their leash pressure technique too much. That way I could just have them sit, I walk away, I can create that distance, and then pull them towards me, right? Or just bring them outside, or out for a walk in the neighborhood, and I'm sure they'll smell something to get them away from you. He's just not leaving my side. I'll work on the down. Food in the other hand. A bit of confusion. That's fine. Barely pulling. If he's confused, there we go. Perfect. You see what I mean? Yes! Pressure stops. Yes. Food. Pull him out of command. So just work on this, guys, as much as you possibly can before our next meeting, so that way they're ahead of the curve. Now remember, leash pressure is important, so that way we can enforce the commands in the future with a leash. If you're pulling your leash and it seems like your dog's uncomfortable, pull less. Or use a collar that is a bit softer, like a martingale collar or a normal collar. Don't use a collar like this if you feel like your dog is just, so distracted by it. Okay? Or make sure that they're, extra hungry, extra motivated. Yes! Yes! Even some praise, If they don't want the food, but they love praise, you could use that as a reward. The problem with praise is you can't guide them with a hand signal with praise, but you can with food. Okay, guys, that concludes this video. I hope it was super clear for you guys to understand, and we'll see you in the next one.